With me now is Kat Jersich, who is HIM's Senior Editor of Healthcare IT News, and Dan Bowden, who is the Vice President, Chief ISO Security Officer of Sentara Healthcare. You guys, I'm really happy to have you both here. Kat, welcome. Dan, I'm happy to have you be with us.
Thanks.
I did a little LinkedIn recon on you, yes, and one of the things that I loved seeing on your profile is that you have been part of building a telehealth platform. What was that like?
Well, it's definitely a huge team effort, and it's we learned a lot going into 2020. We pre-pandemic, we had set a lot of pretty lofty goals. We would like this many encounters. We would like and we actually built our own custom portal and mobile app for patients and plan members. So we didn't go with the vendor provided solution,
wow.
We built our own.
Yep.
And we had some pretty lofty goals about numbers of encounters. And really, frankly, when I looked at the numbers in January of 2020, kind of shaking my head going, I don't know how we're going to do this. And when the pandemic started, our numbers just shot through the roof. So we had knocked out all of our 2020 goals for app downloads and telehealth encounters by really the middle of April.
And you had built it effectively enough to go to scale like that.
We did, and the interesting thing is you're really happy about it at first, and it was a big success. And we went out on a limb. We did something that we weren't sure we could do. And then by the end of 2020, though, once you start using something a lot, now all of a sudden, well, now I want a better experience. It's kind of clunky, and this doesn't work exactly the way we hoped. And so it while it was a success, then it became a new opportunity. And we got a new CIO on board in November, Tim Skeen, and some new brilliant leaders on our IT team. So now it was, sort of our CTO and a couple of people in leadership and infrastructure and security teams trying to do this, where now we've actually brought in really an uplifted level of expertise. Yeah. So now we have the next iteration of omnichannel experience for patients and plan members, and a better solution for telehealth on the way.
Wow, congratulations.
So we've heard a lot about how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected security considerations, especially with regard to telehealth, and you're the CISO at Sentara. Could you talk a little bit about how you've ensured that you're taking security considerations into account when you're developing these technologies?
What's interesting, you need to have a very clear conversation about threats and then the assets and vulnerabilities in your organization. And with the threats, we actually now, we've talked about it so much, my team does a twice weekly threat briefing call. Wow. And we tell people, share the appointment with anyone you like, but we talk about, well, what threats are happening globally?
Right.
And is it the dark side example versus SolarWinds, or are evil? Or we learned about a new one, I think, called Lockbit this morning with the Accenture incident, right?
Lucky you, I'm sure you're thrilled about that.
Yeah. And so we talk about globally what's happening, nationally what's happening, within our sector, what's happening, and then what does it mean to us? Yeah. And then that way it helps people, because it just feels like you're drowning in the middle of an ocean of uncertainty. And what we try to do is cull things down and say, we're not vulnerable to that kind of threat, but we are to this kind.
Yeah, yesterday we ended up having somebody in cybersecurity who brought up the subtle shift of how you progress. Instead of putting up a force field, making a moat and a giant wall to start, to actually accept the fact that these threats are here, that they might come, and shift your thinking to think, how, if it does come, can I be reactionary versus completely preventative?
Exactly. And you do, and I love preventive controls, right? Every CISO loves preventive controls. But you have to assume maybe the attack models, DarkSide chose to find a vulnerability in SolarWinds. And they sort of did this spray attack against all SolarWinds customers. And you can position yourself against that, but then there's the threat actor who wakes up in the morning and says, I'm coming after your company and I am not going to rest until it happens.
Get there. Right.
And that's a different attack model that you need to also be ready for. So to your point, you can do preventive, but it's sort of like if somebody followed one of us home and just examined everything we did, how we come and go, what we do, they'll eventually figure out how to sneak into the garage when we're not looking and get through the house and learn that you don't lock every single door inside the house. But it's the same analogy with your company. You've got to find some detective capabilities to know when someone's taking good credentials and doing bad things with them.
Dan, do you feel like there has been anything that's particularly innovative in terms of cybersecurity and how to fight it that has really excited you?
I think a couple of things. I know with, we have red team attacks. We invested, when we decided to build our own mobile apps and web portals, there were some concerns about software vulnerabilities.
Oh, yeah.
So we invested in some really what I consider next generation web shielding and web app shielding capabilities. And in the red team example, they said, hey, we looked all around and had a really tough time finding anything to exploit software-wise. So that's been one that we've been really excited about. And then the next thing we're looking hard at that I want to get excited about is high-fidelity user behavior analytics, where I'm assuming someone's running around with good credentials doing bad things. How do I zero in on that and get, because you tell the company, say I want to find a needle in a haystack, and they present me with 15,000 needles. I say, okay, show me the dirtiest 150.
I mean, isn't it crazy that the way you have to be thinking now, right?
Yeah, and so that's what I want to get excited about, is that. So I'm hoping that happens in the next 6 to 12 months.
How to find the sharpest needle.
I'm really, it's really nice to hear from you and start to get an understanding of how this all plays. It's something I think when you're not part of it, you don't think about how intricate it is. So thank you so much for being here, and we really appreciate
My pleasure.
Your time.
Thank you.